Well, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the Cattlemen's Congress here in Oklahoma City. We are excited to get started with your steer show this morning. If I could please have you all rise for our national anthem. Well, once again, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the Cattlemen's Congress. We are excited to get started with your market steer show this morning. Our judges, Mr. Kyle Connolly and Shane Bedwell. Your first class in the ring will be Class 1. These will be ABC steers, weights of 1360 to 1469. Well, for those of you joining us ringside again, welcome to the Cattlemen's Congress. In this division, we will be paying out $1,000 to your champion and $500 to the reserve.
This is a really good class, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Pleasure to be here. Kyle and I are looking forward to this show, and this is a tall order to get started off on. These are 5 really nice steers that are all just a little bit different in terms of their type and their kind. We ended up with 2 kind of lighter steers here on the front end. We like their quality. I think when they come through the gate, these are the 2 cattle that have the most balance. These are the 2 cattle that have the most style and just correctness about them. And the yellow steer just takes it a step further in terms of his power, his shape, his thickness, his bone, foot size. He has the most quality look in terms of just that balance and bone and just how he all ties together. Really nice shape down his top. Just enough more condition there over his rib and finish coming back into his flank. Just a heads up, really high quality steer. Red one, the young lady does a nice job with, and he's a bit of a handful, but there's a really up-headed, smooth-shouldered steer. Really like the shape coming out of the back of his shoulder. He's a steer that really has a nice depth to his flank and just turn there to his body. We could maybe just give him just a little bit more power in a comparative sense to the cattle on either side of him, but that steer to us is just a little bit more functional in terms of his structure, how he's built up through his shoulder and his hock. Black steer is undeniably the powerful steer in the class. Really a big topped one. Really like the power and thickness in him. Just a little coarser and crestier up through his front end for us. Steer that just wants to get a little straighter and tighter in how he goes. Then you've got these 2 big-bodied, real practical steers that set in 4th and 5th. They're really deep-sided. We like their body, easy-doing kind of cattle. Both just a little bit plainer. We thought the baldy steer had just a little more shape to him. The yellow steer has a little more length and takes that body a step further even. Really good class. Give those American exhibitors a good hand, please.
Well, congratulations in that first class. Our next class of steers in will be your first class of British steers. We'll have 2 classes of these steers. Your first class, first place, will take home $1,000. Second place, also $1,000. Second class, first place, also $1,000. Champion in this next division, $500, and reserve $250. And congratulations in our first class, your champion ABC steer exhibited by Tucker Wells. Reserve in that division exhibited by Taylor Jeffrey. Third place, Corbin Earhart. Fourth place went to Brett Sturgeon. And fifth place, Cannon Kirk. Again, entering the ring at this time is our first class of British steers. These steers weigh 1050 to 1307. Well, for those of you just joining us, we'd like to welcome our judges today, Mr. Kyle Connolly and Shane Bedwell. Shane Bedwell is from Holton, Missouri, where he lives with his wife Lacey, his daughter Celie Rose, and his son Chisholm. He is the COO and Director of Breed Improvement for the American Hereford Association. We'd also like to welcome our judge Kyle Connolly of Sulphur, Oklahoma, where he lives with his wife Amanda and two sons, Case and Jack. He's the owner and operator of Connolly Cattle of Sulphur, Oklahoma. For those of you sitting ringside, please put your hands together for our judges this morning of our Market Steer Show.
Well, good morning. And me and Shane thought this class kind of sorted itself out fairly logically for us. The shorthorn marked steer here that's going to win definitely combines muscularity and balance and soundness all in one package, and just easily sorts his way up in this class. This black steer, really appreciate how sound and free moving he is. He just needs to have more thickness and muscle to get up any higher for us today, but a very, very correct, nicely balanced steer. The young man showing the lighter weight shorthorn, again on balance, this steer ranks right at the top, but he's maybe just a touch shallower bodied and lighter weight in this particular group. These steers coming next, there's a group of lighter weight steers that maybe just don't balance up quite as well and don't show you the eye appeal and balance of the top end of this class, but a really nice class winner on the top end.
Well, congratulations in our first class of British steers. First place exhibited by Danielle White. Second place, Briley Harmon. Third place, Corbin Earhart. Fourth place in that class, Eric Hamill. Fifth place exhibited by Quade Hallam. Sixth place, Calvin Chapman. And seventh, Channing Bass. Now in the ring will be your second class of British steers. There are just two classes of our British steers. We'll bring in your first and seconds. Our judges will select their champion and reserve. In this division, your class winners will take home $1,000, champion $500, and reserve $250. Steers in this class weigh 1364 to 1549. For those of you sitting ringside, on your sheets for your steer show, the declared weights on these steers are $12.99 to $14.75.
Well, this is a really good class and a lot of depth, a lot of stoutness in these cattle, and kind of starting to build into a show here. But the two steers here on the front end, they were the last through the gate, and both Kyle and I, before we handled, said those are two really nice steers. They have length, they have balance, they have correctness. You know, they're two really nice steers. The steer up front to us is just a little more genuine. Although he's not deeper, we think he's truer in his rib shape. We think he's truer in his pin set. You study those two cattle up front, and he's set better in his shoulder and his knees, square on those front feet. Just a really nice steer to go ahead and win this class. The body, the depth, the volume goes to the one in second. Really like that steer's length of body. We like the attractiveness in his rump and his hip. Up front, he's just a little straighter. He's not quite as genuine out of the back of his shoulder. Maybe could give him just a little bit more turn there. But a nice steer, well-presented steer. Young lady does a tremendous job. Here's a really tanky, massive, powerful steer here in third. This girl does a really good job with a big bone, big-footed steer. Gets out and handles the mass pretty well. He's a little shorter bodied, a little bit plainer up through his front end and his head, but a massive top in that steer. Congratulations. Calf coming next here in fourth, big-bodied, bold-ribbed, real practical in terms of his kind, and that's really what dictates him over the other three steers here in the class because he has that rib shape, he has that practicality, true meat animal shape, and just width in him. When you study that steer out on the move, he kind of falls apart. He's just a little deeper in his neck, a little shorter up through his front end, but a real practical, good-bodied steer. As we work on down in this class, this young lady's got an intriguing steer. We gave him a couple more looks because there's some pieces in this guy you kind of like. He's got a really nice hind leg in him. He's got a beautiful shape coming down his top. He's a high cutability steer in terms of that regard. With that, though, he kind of tapers right in behind his shoulder. He wants to turn them front feet out in him and just give up some of the mass ahead of him. Then we've got two kind of longer-bodied steers coming out next. We appreciate them in terms of their length. They have a pretty good shape to them. Just a little leaner cattle, a little harder in terms of their body and structure. A really good class. Give them a good hand, please.
Well, congratulations in our second class of British steers. First place exhibited by Laramie Blakely. Second place, Kylie Dodd. Third place, Kentley Loinkin. Fourth place was exhibited by Grace Miller. Fifth place, Kobe Kirby. Sixth place, Austin Earhart. And seventh place, Andrew Triplett. We're now going to bring in those first and seconds out of our two British classes, and our judges will select their champion and reserve.
Shane and I'd like to congratulate these exhibitors in this British division. We've seen some really nice steers through here so far, and as Shane said, it's starting to build up to some high-quality steers and being a really good show here. So at this time, let's give these guys a quick round of applause, and Shane will go show you the two that we like.
Well, congratulations in your British division. Your champion exhibited by Laramie Blakely and reserved to Kylie Dodd. We'll now bring in Class 1 of your crossbred steers. These steers weigh 1080 to 1195.
got a really strong class here, and Shane and I find these top two steers to be pretty similar, but the young lady here shows the steer that's got more muscle, more thickness. He's bigger topped. We like this steer from the side. We like his skull shape a lot better than the steer in second, but he's very balanced, well shown, and just an easy place for us to start. Young man steer here, as we said, maybe a little longer face steer that just maybe doesn't have the dimension and thickness in him as this class winner right in front of him, but certainly matches his type and kind and color, no doubt, and just a very, very high quality, complete steer that gets out and travels very nicely as well. The young lady's showing this gold colored steer in third, very practical in terms of his size. He's really big topped. We like the way he handled, just a little shorter bodied, a little more compact, a little more tightness in the way he moves than we'd prefer, but a very, very thick made, balanced steer from the side. A young lady next with a shorthorn influence steer, really thick and rugged, and his look just needs to be a little smoother for us today. A little more shoulder, a little weaker topped, but sure like the hip that steer has. And from there down, there's some really nice steers in this class. There's just lots of different types and kinds, thickness and muscle and balance. Get them down in this class, but very, very diverse, really strong class.
Well, congratulations in your first class of crossbred steers. First place exhibited by Brooklyn Buckingham. Second, George Sinclair. Third place, Kimberly Holland. Fourth place was exhibited by Josie Evans. Fifth place, Cade Robertson. Sixth place, Reed Prosser. Seventh place in that class was exhibited by Brenna Bass. Eighth place, Macy Wissian. Ninth place was exhibited by Kylie Lemons. 10th place, Courtney Prosser. 11th place, Dalton McNally. 12th place in that class, Ethan McMahon. We're now going to bring in Class 2 of your Crossbred Steer Show. These steers weigh 1,200 to 1,280.
Really, really good class. A fun trio here on the top end to sort, and then 4, 5, 6, 7, I think, are really good cattle, just a little bit different and maybe have a few more holes. But this top pair, I think, is real fun to talk and discuss. Kyle and I thought it was close, and there's some give and take in them. But undoubtedly, the black steer just has, to us, a little more quality up through his front end and his shoulder. He sets down better on those front toes, and that point of his shoulder is better into his body. He's sounder up into his knee and his shoulder. Really like him ahead of his shoulder, like his balance and his look. He's the real fresh top steer that's got a beautiful shape to him. Really like his hip and the attractiveness of it. Sure, he doesn't have as much flank and barrel in his body as that black and white one in second, and I would maybe like to see him just reach out, set down with a little bit more flex down in his lower joints off of his rear two, but we just couldn't deny the look and quality up through his front end and his shoulder and his balance, freshness. That boy does a really good job on a really heads-up, good-looking black steer. Black and white steer in second, love the power, and from his shoulder back, he wins this class for fun. A big, bold-hearted steer, soft and powerful back into the rear third of his body, big in his upper hip pin set, and just pretty sound in that leg for how he carries that muscle and power throughout. It's just that front end when he stopped. It just keeps coming out and over just a little bit more than what we like. He runs downhill just a smidgen, and we just couldn't give him enough balance. We just need to see him sounder up out of that front end. Good black steer coming next in third. We like his rib shape, his body. He's an easy doing steer that's real practical. He's got a big old top sitting in him. He opens up just a little bit more at the top of his shoulder. He's a little shorter bodied and just a little more piecey from the profile, but a good, fundamental, thick, heavy muscled steer. Orange steer coming next in fourth. Sound and practical, deep-sided, long-bodied steer. A lot of good to him. I don't know as he has quite the shape in behind his shoulder as the cattle really on either side of him. This girl does a really good job with this steer next in fifth. A little fresher, a little cleaner up through his front 1/3. We thought, again, in terms of that front end and his knee, he splays out a little bit too much up front. And then of these top 5 steers, he's just a little too narrow underneath for us. Then we get into some real blocky, thick, heavy muscled cattle. Just get a little bit more jammed up, a little coarser in terms of their feature. And on down in your lineup, we're starting to build into some pretty good steers. These cattle, have some body and depth to them, just not enough balance and quality for us. Give them a good hand, folks. That's a nice class.
Well, congratulations in Class 2 here in your Crossbred Steer Show. First place exhibited by Austin Earhart. Second place exhibited by Colby Kirby. Third place was exhibited by Taylor Jeffrey. Fourth place, Aubrey McIndoe. Fifth place, Briley Harmon. Sixth place, Ashlyn Neeb. Seventh place, Carly Sargent. Eighth place went to Cynthia McNally. Ninth place in that class, Dylan Behrens. 10th place, Savannah Warren. And 11th place, John Davis. Now in the ring is Class 3 Crossbred steers. These steers weigh at 1294 to 1330.
Well, it's no surprise we took a little extra time on this class. Shane and I seen these cattle very similarly, but as you can tell, if you're ringside, this class is very challenging to place with several good steers, 6, 7 deep. But this top pair, I think, is pretty close. But the way we look at it, this young man steer that wins the class is the best-footed one of the top end. He is tremendous in terms of his hoof shape. Really like the way he sets down off both ends. If you want to nitpick on that steer a little bit, we'd like to clean him up in his chest and his brisket just a little bit. But we think this steer definitely comes out of the top of his shoulders as good as anything. And still, for having just a little bit of chest, he still balances. Big topped, really level top line, really nice tail head laid in him, and tremendous power and tremendous bone and good movement on this steer. Just a really a good one to start off with. Shane, we kind of seen this steer on the very end down here, and we kind of ignored him for a minute. If you really want to look at his color, it kind of turns you away just a notch. But this steer really grew on us, and Shane really made me pay attention a little bit to him. I love his front feet. I love the way he gets out of that shoulder. Very balanced steer. We see him maybe being just a little bit more opened up at the top of his shoulders, maybe not quite as attractive there as our class winner, but a steer that definitely has balance. He's as long striding as any steer. Granted, he'd like to roll those hocks out just a little bit. Maybe doesn't have as much hoof on the outside of each foot, but off those rear legs. But very, very smooth, well-shown, well-presented steer. And second, one of the smoothest patterned, most attractive steers in the whole class is here in third. The thing that me and Shane just couldn't get around is the way this steer just shortened up in his stride. As you put him on the move, he just wouldn't relax and move out calmly and fluent like we'd like to see him. But we really appreciate how smooth and thick-topped and big-hipped he is and well-shown. But just like to see him hit his stride a little better today. This young lady made us think a lot, too. Just a well-shown steer, so attractive and jack-necked, big-topped. We just like to maybe give this steer a little more length. He's a little round, he's a little short, a little tighter flanked, but a steer that when she gets him shown, pretty impressive and just a very, very high-quality one. This young lady, I think she's a great showman. I think this steer is just giving her a little bit of a hard time today. He's wanting to maybe roll up in his top line and hold his tail out a little bit. And with this steer's type, it kind of throws him off from the balance from the side as we study balance. This steer's maybe just a little bit up in his top, and just he's giving her a hard time today. But tremendous product in this steer, big hip and big top, free moving. Just like to see him handle his top line a little better today. Young man showing the red steer, very fresh and very smooth, and gets out and moves. He's just going to give up some power to the top end of this class, but we sure like this steer, and he definitely made the top end. But tremendous class. If you're ringside, let's give this class and these exhibitors a big round of applause. Very impressive.
Well, congratulations in our third class of Crossbred steers. First place exhibited by Mason Grady. Second place exhibited by Micaiah Lambert. Third place went to Ruby Bell. Fourth place was exhibited by Kiana Langton. Fifth place exhibited by Peyton Rogers. Sixth place, Braden Callis. Seventh place was exhibited by Charlie Hudgens. Eighth place was exhibited by Parker Lockhart. Ninth place, Keegan Murphy. 10th, Tyler Shreve. And 11th, Sage Vickery. Now in the ring, we'll bring in Class 4 of your Crossbred steers. These steers weigh 1342 to 1398.
Well, folks, this has been really, really good, and I know Kyle talked that last class, but these last two classes, boy, have been tough and good, and I can't remember two tougher, more challenging classes in quite a while. I mean, the steers are that good, and we try to give everybody the best look that we possibly could, because I think, from outside of this first place steer on down, you could do a lot of different things in the cattle, and they're very good, but there's maybe a place or two we might tweak them. But the steer up front is just one of those ones that ties together balance, power, muscle, soundness. Love his hip and hind leg, love his rear feet and how he sits down. He's bold-bodied, stout and thick in his top, fresh. He's not the long crane-necked one, but I don't think they've got to be. He's got still a great chest floor in him. He fits this weight really nice. Shape to his neck is really good. Just love the soundness of that steer when he gets out and motors. Really a stout steer to go ahead and tie into. Young lady in second is an interesting steer, and we really like him from that shoulder back. Again, he has some freshness and quality about him. We really like the shape of his back and his top. Very attractive in his back leg, big-footed at the ground, stout and sound in how he goes. His hang-up, if you catch him from the wrong view, is right up through his front end. He just wants to turn out a little bit on those front toes. He gets just a little bit flatter in his forerib, and I wish there was just a little bit more squareness to that dude's chest. And then that top pair gets really, really close and fun to sort, because from there on back, that steer's got a lot of really good pieces that we certainly like. Steer in third complements that second place steer really nice, because he's stronger in behind his shoulder. Young man's got a real long-bodied, big top steer. We really like him in that regard. I think when we made that last kind of lap with him, this steer tightens up in terms of his structure, and I think he also gets a little tubular back into the rear third of his body. I just want to change his underline and just build him just a little bit differently there. But a nice long-bodied steer, really has some shape to him as you get into him. Here's an interesting steer both Kyle and I like quite a bit. Big old long outline kind of steer, deep in his side. We really appreciate him in that regard. He's just a little too up on his joints off of either end. He's a tight walking steer in how he gets out, and I think maybe he just needs a little bit more true dimension as you get underneath that steer. But we like his pattern, we like his shape, we like his balance and squareness in a comparative sense next to the young lady here in the purple shirt. This steer kind of starts a set of cattle that have a little more flank and body and depth there from the profile, and we like that. We like that production. We like that volume. This steer, though, he gets a little bit plainer. We would change him in his tail head and how it sets into his body, and then off of those back two, that steer just needs to be readjusted there. But a big top, big-bodied, good kind of a steer, just a little past his prime, just a little piecey in terms of his balance and structure. This wide underline steer, you either really love him, you hate him, or you're somewhere in the middle, and I think that's kind of where we landed on him. We like that rib shape and body. Again, a real practical, good kind of steer. He's a little plain out here in this lineup, and structurally, we couldn't move him any higher because he's just a steer that's just okay there, and so he really didn't bring enough of those it factors to get any higher in the class for us. Black and white steer comes out next. Again, long-bodied steer, deep-bodied, real practical, pretty stale up in that front end, and his chest floor gets a little flatter in his shape. He's just kind of lost it as you start digging in and reading him from behind. I like the structure, the length of body, the up-headed look in this young lady steer coming out next. He's just a little too flat-sided for us, gets a little bit narrow underneath. Young man steer coming out next, a real thick, muscular steer. We really appreciate his shape and the turn to him. We thought that this steer got us straight up through his front end as any of them, but a nice steer. Young man does a good job of showing him, wanting to give him the credit, what's due. He's just a little straight-fronted from us. Big old long steer that came through the gate later in that class, just a little bit dry and just flatter in his top, just a little more tubular in his forerib and back into his flank, but a big, husky, long one. This young lady brings a big-bodied, big bull practical steer, just a little piecey and plain, a little more mature in terms of his kind. And we finish up the class with a nice silver steer, good outline, sound in the structure, just gave up some of the muscle and product. Young man did a good job of showing him from start to finish. It was a great class of cattle. Give him a good hand, folks. Really enjoyed it.
Well, congratulations in Class 4 of our Market Steer Show. First place exhibited by Tristan Himes. Second place was exhibited by Mason Grady. Third place in that class, Mason Grady. Fourth place, Kennedy Van Zant. Fifth place, Olivia Caldwell. Sixth place, Colby Kokagen. Seventh place in that class, Harbor Lonigan. Eighth place in that class was exhibited by Alyssa Borson. Ninth place, Tanner Otto. 10th place, Isaac Beeson. 11th place, Taylor Grubbs. And 12th place, Chase Simmons. Now coming into the ring is Class 5 of your Market Steer Show.
We run into this class maybe not quite as deep as what we've seen in the last two, but we've got a nice pair of steers on the top end here to talk about. The solid black steer this young lady's showing, I think you can safely say he's one of the sounder steers in here, but he balances really nice. He's functional, love his body. He's got adequate muscle. He's not going to blow you away, but in terms of thickness, but he's definitely sound and balanced and high quality, and this young lady has done a good job showing him. The white-legged steer here is just super wide-based. He might handle just a touch soft, and I think you could see that by looking at him. He's just a softer-made kind of steer, but he's just very, very big-bodied and functional in his kind. Just tremendous rib cage in this steer. Very sound on his feet and legs, but we'd just like to see a little bit more muscle, a little more shape in that steer to run any higher in this class. But again, a very functional, practical kind of steer. Very, very striking steer here in third. This young lady's done a great job showing him. But as he gets on the move, we'd like to change that steer in his shoulder and front leg. But just tremendous hip and power in this steer. Just needs to be sounder off that front end. And me and Shane both want to commend this young lady. She's doing a great job in here. The steer's been hard to handle, but she's done a great job in here. Very, very nice steer. He's balanced, but he's just not been the easiest to deal with in this class. But needs a little more balance, needs a little more look to get up any higher, but a very nice, complete steer. And the three steers that come next are steers that maybe just don't have the flair, the muscularity, or the balance to get up any higher. But again, a nice pair on the very top end as we get closer to the end here.
Well, congratulations in Class 5. First place was exhibited by Sadie Wynn. Second place, Joseph Martinez. Third place, Alyssa Borzen. Fourth place, Sage Shank. Fifth place, Rance McIntyre. Sixth place, Maddie Gray. And seventh, Cheyenne Dawson. Now coming into the ring will be Class 6. This will be your final class of market steers. We would at this time like to say thank you to Richie and Mary Lou Oakes, Kurt Murray, and the rest of the crew here in the ring for making sure that the cattle get in and get placed. So once again, thank you to the crew here in the ring. Let's put our hands together for everyone that made the show possible. Well, again, we'd like to thank all of the sponsors that made the Cattlemen's Congress possible. All of our crossbred steer classes, first place is taking home $1,000. So first place in those crossbred classes will be taking home $1,000.
This is a really good class to end things up on. This black and white one is one good one, in our opinion. To find a steer that stout and thick and sound and correct and still have that kind of look and quality late in the day, I don't care where you're at, that's a really, really high quality steer. Stout in his chest floor, opened up, good looking. We like him quite a bit. Brockle-faced steer here in second just kind of falls there based off of his balance and his style, his practicality. He's not quite as just neat and as stout as that one that wins the class, but we're sure glad we've got him in second. He makes a real logical second in our opinion, but just not quite the truck that steer that wins the class is. Steer that comes next here in third, this girl gets about as much as you can out of this rascal. He is a big-bodied, just real dimensional steer, lots of power and top in him. Steer that gets just a little bit plainer up through that front 1/3 here today, but he's opened up stouter as you get underneath him and his chest floor, and just that rear turn and rear third of his body is more powerful and just more genuine there. He starts a pair of them here that just get a little bit tighter and more uncoordinated, so muscle and base width kind of sort that pair. This girl here in fourth, she can kind of show too, and she does a really good job in my opinion, because that steer will balance out just a smidgen better down his top line and out of his hip there, a little more attractive there in that hind leg and how she sets him up. You get in front of that steer, and I think he narrows up down into his chest floor, and we kind of talked about he just struggles a little bit more around the ring. This young man steer is one of those really long-bodied, really neat-necked, real extreme kind of steers. He knows it as well as we do. He's just a little more tubular, and we talked about it when I pulled him in there. Steer just doesn't have enough heart and just body shape for all of his length, and he's just ran a good race. That young man does a good job out here. As we work on down in our class, we've got a steer that has quite a bit of product and muscle and thickness in him. He gets just a little piecey from the side in terms of his body and his balance, but a nice steer that's certainly thick. Old Yeller's a long, sound walking steer. We appreciate his smoothness, just gets a little bit flatter. Then we've got a big old hoss here down towards the end that's chuck full of meat and muscle, just a little coarser and plainer. Big top steer coming out with him. It just gets a little bit rounder, and a big old tall steer to go ahead and finish out the class. Give him a good hand, and we'll move into our champion cross drive.
Well, congratulations in your final class of Crossbred steers. First place was exhibited by Jade Stone. Second place, Maddie O'Leary. Third place, Samantha Graves. Fourth place, Kinsey Crow. Fifth place, George Sinclair. Sixth place went to Marcy Koff. Seventh place in that class, Emma Schenold. Eighth place, Carson Bell. Ninth place, Keegan Holt. And 10th place, Mariah Martin. At this time, we're going to bring in all of your firsts and seconds, and our judges will select a top 5 crossbred steers. We are looking for George Sinclair to the makeup area. George Sinclair, we are looking for you to the makeup area.
Well, folks, it's sure good, man. We've really enjoyed this show. There hadn't been maybe as many numbers as last year, but boy, the quality has been fantastic. The cattle have been really good. Kyle and I have really enjoyed this. You've gave us a pretty good test and a challenge out here, but we're real pleased when we get these class winners back out here in this lineup. We really like the seconds as well. It kind of comes down to a pair of these steers that probably just hit us a little bit harder in their particular classes as we work out through this top five. And I think when it comes down to the two of them that we like, there's one that probably just has a little more presence about him, one that's just a little bit neater up through that front end and shoulder and how it all blends together. We see him a little more genuine from behind in terms of his base width and how he gets out there and goes. Our reserve is going to be a real powerful, long-bodied steer that's awesome at the ground in terms of his feet. And then we'll kind of look at the rest of them and get a good top five. But this is a special, special deal. I'm tickled for all these young people. I know there's a lot of good, hard-working families and people around here that you came and just gave it your all, and we really appreciate you giving us a really, really good show in these crossbreds. Put your hands together for these young people, and we'll show you a top five on them.
Congratulations, your champion crossbred steer, exhibited by Tristan Himes. Your reserve champion crossbred, exhibited by Mason Grady. Your third overall is Jade Stone. Your fourth overall crossbred steer, exhibited by Mackay Lambert. And congratulations, your 5th overall Crossbred steer exhibited by Austin Earhart. Congratulations to those exhibitors. In just a moment, we are going to bring in your champion reserve out of your ABC and British breeds, as well as those top 5 exotics. And our judges, Mr. Kyle Connolly and Shane Bedwell, will be selecting their top 5 market steers. Well, ladies and gentlemen, at this time, it is my pleasure to introduce to you all of our division champion reserves in top 5 here in your Market Steer Show. Your champion in the ABC division exhibited by Tucker Wells. Your champion in the British exhibited by Laramie Blakely. Your champion crossbred steer was exhibited by Tristan Himes. Your reserve champion next in the ring, coming out of your ABC division, reserve champion Taylor Jeffrey. Reserve champion in the British breed, Kylie Dodd. And your reserve champion crossbred steer was exhibited by Mr. Mason Grady. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you sitting on the side or sitting up in the stands, please put your hands together and congratulate all of our steer exhibitors here at the Cattlemen's Congress. Again, we want to extend a special thank you to all of those that help make this show possible, from the sponsors to our interns to the staff and the crew here in the ring. We certainly couldn't do it without you. A big thank you to our judges today, Mr. Shane Bedwell and Kyle Connolly. At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Tyler Norvell.
Thank you so much for being here today. What a great cap to a great 2 weeks that we've had here in Oklahoma City. We knew last year we were going to have a steer show because of the cancellations, but we also knew we wanted to have one again this year. But we knew we had to have some sponsors step up and help us and make it possible. We were so fortunate to have Kent and Julie Herzog do that with Your Fun Warehouse here in Oklahoma City. We want to let Kent say just a few words here this afternoon. Let's give him a nice round of applause for his support.
Thank you, Tyler. On behalf of Your Fun Warehouse, we're honored to be here, to be one of the many sponsors of the Cattlemen's Congress. And Julie and I are both products of this program, and we're proud of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kent. As was mentioned today, we will be selecting 5 overall steers, and the payout for the grand champion will be $25,000, reserve $20,000, bronze $10,000, 4th overall $7,500, and 5th overall $5,000. Let's give all our sponsors a nice round of applause as we hear from our judges for their selections.
Well, as we get our grand drive back out here in front of me and Shane, I think we're pretty tickled as far as the quality and the depth we've seen today. As he said, maybe not quite as many numbers as we saw last year, but I think when people figure out the system and how this is going to work in years to come, this will just do nothing but get better, especially with our great sponsorship this year. Sure helps and makes you want to thank him a great deal for his generosity. But again, I thank Shane for asking me to do this with him. We've got along for many years and see cattle very closely, and I sure appreciate it. And it's been an enjoyable event to be with him on. But again, I'll let Shane say a few words. But again, let's congratulate our exhibitors and their families. Tons of work goes into this, and me and Shane realize it.
Thanks, Kyle. I appreciate you agreeing to do it with me. I know, it's always good to have another set of eyes when the quality gets this good and it gets that tough and challenging out here. It's good to be able to bounce an idea off a guy that you really respect. We got to hang out last night a little bit with his family, Kyle's family, and that was enjoyable. And we've known each other for a long time, and it's fun to get to work together. I just want to say thank you to Cattlemen's Congress. This has been a neat event that's started, and I know Tyler and his entire staff, they put in a lot of hours to give you guys a platform to come out here and just show cattle and do what we really like doing, and that's being around one another. That's exhibiting the cattle, teaching our young people what life's all about, and there's not a greater arena to do this, and both Kyle and I are raising our kids through this and believe in it 100%. And you've got great sponsors that come to the table like Mr. Herzog and others that stepped up to the plate, be able to give you a really something to shoot for here outside of what the traditional norm is. And I just really want to thank Tyler, Bray, your entire staff of what you've done and how you've organized this. This is first class. So why don't you give them a big round of applause, people? And thank you, guys. And awesome set of steers. We're going to get you a top 5 here. We really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Well, congratulations, your grand champion steer here at the Cattlemen's Congress, exhibited by Tristan Himes. Reserve champion steer exhibited by Mr. Mason Grady. Your third overall exhibited by Jade Stone. Your fourth overall market steer exhibited by Mackay Lambert. And your 5th overall market steer exhibited by Austin Earhart. Again, congratulations to all of our steer exhibitors. A special thank you to our judges, Kyle Conley and Shane Bedwell. On behalf of the Cattlemen's Congress, thank you for joining us. We certainly appreciated having you all here in Oklahoma City, and we will see you next year.